Today, we continue to honor the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King and celebrate Black History Month by taking a look at the 1934 East West All Star Game and a grand celebration of the African American experience called Oh Sing a New Song, which took place the night before the game.
Chicago.
Those of you who were with us last year might recall our look at the 1933 World's Fair in Chicago and its connection to the inaugural East West All Star Game. Well, that fair was such a success, both aesthetically and financially, that it was renewed for a second season in 1934. The fair was once again held on a 3.5 mile stretch along the shore of Lake Michigan. And as the updated map informs us, the Chicago World's Fair was bigger, better, newer in 1934. There were still the popular theme exhibits, like this Hall of Science pictured here, as well as commercial exhibits like the beautiful Chrysler Motors Pavilion. Henry Ford famously refrained from exhibiting in 1933, but the success his rivals enjoyed at the fair inspired this new Ford exhibit in 1934, one of the fair's largest. Like any World's Fair, there were plenty of international exhibits, like this new Italy exhibit, brand new for the 34 season. The Midway featured rides and games and sideshow amusements and was possibly the most popular feature of the fair. The futuristic architecture of the fairgrounds became a fanciful explosion of light and color after dark, a scene perhaps best enjoyed from overhead on the popular Sky Ride. And I have to mention that Sinclair Gasoline had an exhibit of life-size dinosaurs. They sponsored a similar exhibit at the New York World's Fair 31 years later, much to the delight of 4-year-old me. And of course, the Chicago World's Fair was directly responsible for the first Major League All-Star Game and its counterpart, the Negro League's inaugural East-West All-Star Game. African American representation in 1933 was at best a mixed bag. On the one hand, you had a replica of the log cabin built in 1779 by Haitian American trader Jean-Paul Baptiste de Sable, pardon my French, the first permanent settlement in what would become the city of Chicago. Hello. On the flip side, there was an exhibit called Darkest Africa that perpetuated the worst stereotypes of people of color. There were also complaints about discriminatory hiring practices by the fair and some restaurants and vendors that would not serve Black patrons. The Black community was determined that these practices would not be repeated in 1934, and Black representatives in the state legislature withheld support for the bill approving a second season until their concessions were met. Their actions were successful, and discriminatory hiring and service practices were barred for the fair's second season. One major gain for African Americans at the 34 Fair was the organization of a grand pageant celebrating the African American experience to be held at Chicago's Soldier Field on Saturday, August 25th, the evening before the second annual East-West game. We're here, of course, to talk about that ball game, but many, if not most, of those in attendance for that contest were also present at the pageant the night before. And now our dear friend, Mr. Ike Brooks, will treat us with a look at that pageant, which was entitled, Oh, Sing a New Song.
Thank you, Dominic. And as we look at what Dominic just mentioned, that the entire country was going to participate in this fair, I want to point out that there was a Cleveland connection to that exhibit during the World Fair. It was called Oh Sing a New Song, as we just heard. And the best of the best musicians and talent collaborated to make this a success. This is an article from the Indianapolis Recorder, the day of the fair, and it talks about the folks who were participating. And the first gentleman's picture that you see on the far left was born in Cleveland, Ohio. He's a graduate of Central High School. His name is H. Lawrence Freeman. When you go to documents, and I guess we're covering it up as Dominic is leaving or coming back.
No, Zoom is trying to barge in.
Okay, but Professor Freeman was a self taught musician. At the time, he had composed 12 grand operas. Five of those had been produced. At the turn of the century, he was the music director at Wilberforce College, and he was also professionally trained with the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra. He was quite a talent. In his lifespan, he actually composed 23 operas. One of them, titled Zululand, had 2,000 pages of score. Unfortunately, it was never performed. The person next to him is Will Vaudrey, who was considered a master craftsman among musicians. Third in there, and almost in the center, is Will Marion Cook, a musical genius as described in the article, and singing and playing his classical and semi-classic compositions. Then there's another Cleveland connection, Noble Sissle. Grew up in Cleveland. He came from Indianapolis originally, and also a graduate of Central High. Some who are jazz enthusiasts may recall him as he teamed up with Eubie Blake, and they toured Europe. In addition, Major N. Clark Smith was one of the leading authorities on primitive African music, and that was his contribution. The young lady pictured there is Irene Carey McLaughlin, who directed the presentation of the dances. And on the far left are part of the choral group, Helen Payne, Harriet Bacon, Francis Alexander. So what they collaborated on is Oh, Sing a New Song. And this poster that's coming up right now describes what occurred. And years ago, Dominic shared with me several articles about the East West All Star games, and in particular, Oh, Sing a New Song. And many of those articles describe, and I'm going to choose this one and just share with you what was stated. And I chose this because it came from the Chicago Defender. They were certainly concerned about the portrayal and the treatment of Negroes during the World Fair. The byline in this is William G. Nunn, city editor, Chicago Defender. They made me proud that I'm a Negro, and tonight I'm singing a new song. For under the floodlights of this memorable field, with the famous sky ride of the Chicago World Fair overhead, with the reflection of the famous outer drive of this same fair casting a mellow reflection, and with the perfect harvest moon riding majestically in the heavens, the Afro-American pageant, Oh Sing a New Song, unfolded in a blaze of simple glory, which gave to some 40,000 onlookers a different conception of the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of a great and glorious race. It was Negro history depicted in song. Songs which had their inception in the holds of the ghost ships which brought our people to this country as slaves. It reverberated throughout the length and breadth of the South during the days before emancipation, and finally reached fruition through the genius of Negro authors and composers. We saw Negro history unfold itself. Much of it was not pretty, but it was terrifyingly true. And as we walked away from Soldier Field tonight, we felt that we had been taught an all important lesson in race pride. There were 40,000 people in Soldier Field tonight. Many of them, thousands, were white. They might have come to find a different kind of entertainment, but we believe that they imbibed the lesson in interracial goodwill far stronger than the pen any master writer could have impressed upon them. They discovered something of the Negro's history. They learned something of his accomplishments. Those people left Soldier Field tonight with a burning message written across their hearts. To those men who toiled and sacrificed to depict the history of the Negro in song, we owe a deep and full hearted vote of thanks. Oh, Sing a New Song should never die because it tells the poignant story of a downtrodden group. It gives the highlights of that group's history. And all races and groups of people are known by the history they've written in the heavens and the distance that they have come. It's true of the Jew, it's true of the Irish, it's true of the Italian and all the rest. Some there were at Soldier Field who felt disgust at the scenes depicted, but I felt proud tonight that I was a member of a race who had achieved in music what men of the caliber of Will Marion Clark, H. Lawrence Freeman, Will Vaudrey, W.C. Handy, William Grant Still, and Major N. Clark Smith were able to show. Then the article goes on to describe the pageant, and Nunn continues to say how proud he was of that because it opened in Africa. The next scene went into slavery, and then post emancipation, the dawn of a new day. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the eve of the East West All Star game. And now I'm going to flip it over to my play by play colleague, Dominic De Niro.
Thank you, Ike. This is Soldier Field as it appeared at that time. Thousands of African Americans from all over the country attended that pageant there, and many of them showed up the following afternoon at Comiskey Park on the city's south side for the East West game, still feeling the pride that Nunn described about the night before. Once again, the East West participants were selected by a vote of the fans in ballots distributed in all the leading black newspapers. And again, please take a moment to consider the black population in the 1930s, marginalized and ignored, and all too often institutionally disenfranchised. What it must have meant for them to be invited to cast a vote, to be told their opinion mattered. Even if it was just to select players in a baseball game, it must have been a very empowering opportunity to be given this opportunity. Now let's take a look at the rosters that were chosen for the game. The manager of the East team is also the East starting shortstop, Dick Lundy of the Newark Dodgers. His coaches are Walter Ball, a leading pitcher in the 1900s, particularly with Chicago's Leland Giants, and the great John Henry Pop Lloyd, who'd featured on some of Rube Foster's best American Giants sides in the 19 teens, among countless other achievements. Batting first for the East and playing center field, the greatest leadoff man of his generation and one of the best of all time, James Cool Papa Bell of the Pittsburgh Crawfords. Before we had the amazing statistical database at Seamheads, I used to worry about Cool Papa Bell. So many of the players who were considered great leadoff men when I was young don't stand up to the more advanced statistical analysis of today. Specifically, men like Louis Aparicio, Maury Wills, and Lou Brock have fallen out of favor because of their low on base percentages. Well, I'm delighted to report that that criticism doesn't apply to Cool Papa. He batted .330 lifetime, walked quite a bit, and ranks in the top 20% of Negro leaguers all time in on base percentage. Cool Papa would have been a star in any era. Batting second, right fielder Jimmy Crutchfield, also of the Pittsburgh Crawfords. Crutchfield was a classic old time number two hitter. Little, fast, excellent bat control, a good bunter, but a mediocre hitter whose extra base hitting came from his speed rather than his power. Crutchfield was also known as an excellent fielder, and the good folks at Seamheads rank him in the 100th percentile of right fielders defensively. In other words, the best ever. Batting third, Pittsburgh Crawford's first baseman Oscar Charleston. The great Oscar was 37 years old, and it showed in many aspects of his game. It had been 5 years since he'd played the outfield, and he rarely stole bases anymore. But the man could still hit, finishing in the top seven in the Negro National League in on base percentage, slugging percentage, and OPS. Batting cleanup, third baseman Ernest Judson Wilson of the Philadelphia Stars. Judd Wilson was simply one of the greatest hitters in baseball history. Over a 24-year Negro League career, he batted .357. His career stats prorated to a 162-game season read 37 doubles, 10 triples, 14 homers, 117 runs scored, 129 driven in, and a 971 OPS. Those are MVP caliber numbers, and it's just his average over nearly 2.5 decades. Batting fifth and catching, Josh Gibson of the Pittsburgh Crawfords. The greatest hitter in Negro League history was just 22 years old in 1934 and already a legend, hitting homers farther and more frequently than anyone had ever seen. Josh led the Negro National League in homers in 1934 with 15. Teammate Oscar Charleston finished second with 7, less than half of Gibson's total. About 1 out of every 6 home runs hit in the league that season were hit by Josh Gibson. Batting sixth, another Pittsburgh Crawford, left fielder Vic Harris. Harris is best known as the manager of the Homestead Grays' long gray line of pennant winners in the 30s and 40s. But in his prime, Harris was a heck of a ball player, a speedy 300 hitter with line drive power, possessing, as you would expect from a future managing legend, a sharp mind for the game. Batting seventh and playing shortstop, the manager of the East team, Dick Lundy. King Richard was a player manager for most of his 21-year career, going back to the Backrack Giants clubs he managed in his 20s. Now 35, Lundy was tasked with starting up a new team in 1934, the Newark Dodgers. The club would evolve into the highly successful Newark Eagles, with Lundy at the helm until 1940. Batting eighth and playing in his first of 5 East-West games, second baseman Chester Williams of the Crawfords. Williams was the Craw's always hustling spark plug for 8 seasons, enjoying his best year at the plate in 34. The starting pitcher for the East was 21-year-old left-hander Stuart Slim Jones of the Philadelphia Stars. The 6'6", 185-pound beanpole was the sensation of the 1934 season. 21 wins against 6 losses, a 1.28 ERA, less than a base runner per inning, and over 7 strikeouts per 9. If you remember Vida Blue or Dwight Gooden when they first came up to the majors, you have a pretty good idea of how unhittable Slim Jones was in 1934. Unfortunately, Jones was also one of baseball's greatest one-hit wonders. 21 and 6 in 34, 12 and 17 for the rest of his career, and dead at the age of 25. There's a legend surrounding Slim Jones's demise that we'll save for another day. For the moment, we'll stick with 1934, and in that moment, Slim Jones is one of the most electrifying pitchers in baseball history. On the bench was Herbert Rap Dixon of the Baltimore Black Sox. In April, our good friend Ted Knorr is going to deliver a presentation on the stellar career of Rap Dixon. I don't want to spoil anything, so for now, let's just say that this is an exceptional 5-tool player struggling with a back injury and enduring the worst of his 16 Negro League seasons. For many years, Bill Cy Perkins was Satchel Paige's personal catcher, following the great pitcher from the Birmingham Black Barons to the Cleveland Cubs, Pittsburgh Crawfords, as well as in the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and at the Denver Post tournament. In addition to catching, Perkins was a pretty capable hitter. Famously, he wore a chest protector that bore the words, "Thou shalt not steal." Satchel Paige of the Crawfords was the leading vote getter in the East and undoubtedly the most famous black ball player in the country. For some unknown reason, both vote leaders, Page and Willie Foster, were held back for bullpen roles rather than starting the game. This is Satchel Paige at the peak of his powers, blazing fast with excellent control. He would develop into more of a finesse pitcher after an arm injury suffered in 1938, but this incarnation of Satch was pure power. His showdowns with Slim Jones later this season would become the stuff of legend. One final Pittsburgh Crawford, Harry Tin Can Kincannon. The West Virginia native was a curveball specialist and strikes me as an unlikely all-star, sporting a 16-26 career one-loss record and recording a below-average ERA in only one of his 9 Negro League seasons. Now let's move on to the West. The manager is Gentleman Dave Malarcher, skipper of the Chicago American Giants. His coaches are two former American Giant stars, former second baseman Bingo DeMoss and former catcher Bruce Petway. Leading off, the top vote getter amongst position players in the East-West balloting, shortstop Willie the Devil Wells of the Chicago American Giants. Though he was struggling through one of his worst seasons at the plate, the Oklahoma native was generally a terrific hitter, brilliant defender, the best black shortstop of his generation, and a very worthy member of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Batting second, third baseman Alex Radcliffe of the Chicago American Giants. Alex is less well known than his brother Ted, the famous double duty Radcliffe, who sometimes pitched and caught in the same game. But he may have been a better ball player and is starting here in his second of 11 East-West Classics. Batting third, American Giants center fielder Norman Turkey Stearns. Turkey Stearns is a Hall of Famer, but I don't think people realize what an inner circle all-time great he was. According to similarity scores at Seamheads, the most comparable players to Turkey Stearns were Joe DiMaggio, Ted Williams, Lou Gehrig, Jimmy Fox, and Babe Ruth. Turkey batted .348 lifetime, ranks third all-time in Negro League home run percentage, is second only to Oscar Charleston in career RBIs, and was a terrific base runner, base stealer, and defensive center fielder. Batting cleanup, another Chicago American Giant, first baseman George Mule Suttles. The fearsome slugger ranks second all-time in home run percentage and isolated power, behind only Josh Gibson in both categories. Fans would yell, "Kick, Mule," when he came to the plate, and the Chicago defender was fond of referring to Suttles as the Black Babe Ruth. Batting fifth, left fielder Roy Red Parnell of the Nashville Elite Giants. Don't pay much attention to the batting stats on the right. They're based on just 7 games worth of box scores. Parnell actually spent most of 1934 as player-manager of the New Orleans Crescent Stars in the Negro Southern League and was a legend in the Southern League where he'd been starring since 1926. He was a solid hitter, but a defensive liability in the outfield. The number 6 hitter was the dynamic 23-year-old Sam Bankhead of Nashville. Bankhead was a versatile performer who could play all over the infield or outfield and was starting in right field for the West for the second year in a row. He would later shine as a shortstop for the Homestead Grays dynasty of the 40s. Batting seventh and catching, veteran backstop Larry Brown of the American Giants. Brown spent most of his career starring for the Memphis Red Sox, who he'd managed in the 1940s. Batting eighth, the other 23-year-old Nashville Elite Giant in the lineup, second baseman Sammy T. Hughes. The general consensus among historians is that Sammy Hughes, Bingo DeMoss, and Newt Allen are the 3 greatest Negro League second basemen in whatever order you want to put them in. The weird thing is you could make a strong argument that none of them are deserving of the Hall of Fame. Second base is a strange position in leagues where the distribution of talent is fairly wide and spread out. For example, major league teams today rarely spend high draft picks on college second basemen. The assumption is that the very best athletes, including the future big league second baseman, are playing shortstop. A similar thing seems to be true about the Negro Leagues. Hughes was a giant for a second sacker, standing 6'3" and weighing close to 200 pounds, and that may have affected him defensively. But he was a fine line drive hitter and playing here in his first of 5 East-West games. Batting ninth and pitching, Ted Big Florida Trent of the American Giants. Ted Trent was a 6'3" right-hander, and his bread and butter was an overhand 12-6 curveball. He was the ace of the powerful St. Louis Stars teams in the last years of the original Negro National League and would fill the same role with the American Giants through the late 30s, pitching in 5 East-West Classics. Andrew Pat Patterson was a 22-year-old rookie second baseman representing the Cleveland Red Sox, the ninth of 10 failed attempts at establishing a Negro League team on the shores of Lake Erie prior to the arrival of the Buckeyes in 1942. Recite them along with me. Tate Stars, Browns, Elites, Hornets, Tigers, Cubs, Stars, Giants, Red Sox, and Bears, oh my. Patterson was a fine hitter and versatile defender used all over the infield during an 11-year career. Pitcher Chet Brewer was the first Kansas City Monarch to participate in the East-West game, the club having ignored the inaugural event. A curveball and scuffball specialist, Brewer would play in big-time blackball from ages 18 to 41 for teams in the USA, Canada, Hawaii, the Philippines, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Panama, and Mexico. After his playing days, he was a longtime scout for the Pittsburgh Pirates and ran a youth baseball league in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles that would graduate Doc Ellis, Bob Watson, Reggie Smith, and Enos Cabell to the major leagues. Chicago's Willie Foster was the leading vote getter in the 1934 polling, but like Satchel Paige would appear from the bullpen rather than start the contest. The considerably younger half brother of the great Rube Foster was, quite simply, the greatest left-handed pitcher in blackball history. Seamheads credits him as being the Negro League career wins leader with 140 against just 68 losses, a gaudy 673 winning percentage. After his playing days, Foster became Dean of Men and head baseball coach at Alcorn State University in Mississippi. Chicago's Melvin or Malvin Putt Powell was an outfielder slash pitcher who would make a late appearance in this game as a pinch runner. And now, with all that context behind us, let's take our seats for the second annual East-West Classic at Comiskey Park, Chicago, Illinois. Sunday, August 26, 3 p.m., an all-star contest showing the cream of Negro baseball and the best man in each position, sponsored by the Negro National League. Our starting pitchers are Slim Jones of the Philadelphia Stars for the East and Ted Trent of the Chicago American Giants for the West. West starter Trent had an easy top of the first, getting Bell to ground out to second and striking out Crutchfield and Charleston. The East's Slim Jones walked Willie Wells on 5 pitches to open the bottom of the first, then committed a balk to move Wells to second with none out. But after Alex Radcliffe fanned, Wells was thrown out by Josh Gibson attempting to steal third. Jones then struck out Turkey Stearns to end the inning. In the second, Vic Harris stroked a sharp single to right with 2 out for the game's first hit. But Harris was thrown out trying to steal second. Larry Brown to Willie Wells, retiring the side. Bottom of the second, Mule Suttles led off with a single to left field. Roy Parnell hit a grounder to the hole on the right side. Second baseman Chester Williams made the play, but his throw was dropped at first by Oscar Charleston, and both runners were safe on the error. Slim Jones fanned Sam Bankhead for the first out, but not before uncorking a wild pitch that moved the runners to second and third. Larry Brown hit a ground ball to third. Judd Wilson threw home, where Josh Gibson tagged out Suttles attempting to score. Then Sammy T. Hughes grounded out to Wilson to end the West's threat. No score after two. Top of the third. Chester Williams' one out single was wasted as Ted Trent completed his final inning of stellar work. The pitching line for Trent: 3 innings, 2 hits, no runs, no walks, 4 strikeouts. Slim Jones retired the West 1-2-3 in his last inning on the All Star mound, and his pitching line was 3 innings, 1 hit, no runs, no walks, 4 strikeouts, a balk, and a wild pitch. Chet Brewer of the Monarchs came in for Trent and quickly retired Crutchfield and Charleston, the latter striking out for the second time. But Judd Wilson worked out a walk, and Josh Gibson singled to center. Men on first and second, 2 outs. Then third baseman Alec Radcliffe robbed Vic Harris of a base hit, saving a run and ending the inning. The East's new pitcher in the bottom of the fourth was the Crawfords' Harry Tin Can Kincannon. Tin Can retired Turkey Stearns, then Mule Suttles lifted a towering fly ball to short center field. Left fielder Vic Harris, center fielder Cool Papa Bell, and second baseman Chester Williams all converged on the ball. Williams lunged for it and just barely got a glove on the ball, deflecting it away from Harris and Bell toward right field. Suttles, a large man, was able to motor into third with a 1 out triple. Roy Parnell hit a fly ball to medium right field, and Suttles tagged up. Right fielder Jimmy Crutchfield's throw to catcher Larry Brown was perfect, and the Mule was out at home. The inning-ending double play marked the second time in the game Mule Suttles was thrown out at the plate. We remained scoreless after 4. Top of the fifth. Chester Williams' 1 out double to the scoreboard and left center is wasted when Brewer fans Kincannon and gets Cool Papa Bell to pop out to left. Sam Bankhead led off the fifth with a scorching liner off Kincannon's leg for a single. But Bankhead was thrown out by Gibson trying to steal second, the third unsuccessful stolen base attempt of the game. Larry Brown followed with a single, but Kincannon retired Hughes and Brewer to end the fifth. Chet Brewer breezed through the sixth with Suttle's error on Charleston's grounder the only thing preventing a perfect inning. His pitching line: 3 innings, 2 hits, no runs, a walk, and a strikeout. Willie Wells led off the home sixth with a hard grounder that hit the third base bag and bounded into left field for a leadoff double. I'll let Chester L. Williams, sports editor of the Pittsburgh Courier, describe what happened next. The 0 hour in this battle of pitchers came early in the sixth inning when the West's shortstop Wells, the first man up, doubled sharply to left field on a ball pitched by Kincannon. Pandemonium reigned in the West's cheering sections. An instant later, a hush fell upon the crowd as the mighty Satchel Paige, prize money pitcher of the East, leisurely ambled across the field toward the pitcher's box. It was a dramatic moment. Displaying his picturesque double windup and nonchalant manner, Satchel started shooting him across the plate and in 5 tosses fanned Radcliffe. The East supporters breathed a sigh of relief, and Satchel settled down to his task. Turkey Stearns flied out to Vic Harris, and Mule Suttle's bat dropped another fly ball into the accurate hands of Vic Harris. This sounded taps for the West. The new pitcher for the West in the seventh inning was hometown ace Willie Foster of the Chicago American Giants. Chester Williams singled in the seventh for his third hit of the game, but for the third time he was left stranded. Seventh inning stretch at Comiskey. No runs, 5 hits, 1 error for the East. No runs, 5 hits, 1 error for the West. Satchel Paige was his dominant self in the bottom of the seventh, retiring Parnell, Bankhead, and Brown 1-2-3. Top of the eighth of a scoreless battle. Cool Papa Bell leads off with a walk, only the second allowed by West pitching. Everyone in the ballpark expected Bell to try and steal second. Three would-be base stealers had already been thrown out in the contest, but those three weren't Cool Papa Bell. As Foster struck out pinch hitter Bill Perkins, Bell swiped second to move into scoring position. Oscar Charleston lined out to Suttles at first for the second out. But Judd Wilson hit a hard liner through the box. Wells and Hughes converged on the ball, but neither could reach it. Wilson pulled into first on the single, while Cool Papa raced home with the game's first run. Josh Gibson ripped an extra base hit to right. Judd Wilson rounded third and head for home. A perfect relay, Bankhead to Suttles to Brown, nailed Wilson at the plate to end the inning. Satchel Paige fanned pinch hitter Pat Patterson of the Cleveland Red Sox to open the eighth, Satch's third strikeout of the afternoon. Willie Foster pushed a bunt past Page and beat second base Williams' throw to first for a single. But Page enticed Wells to ground into a force out, then caught Ratcliffe looking for his fourth strikeout. Rap Dixon, who'd replaced left fielder Vic Harris in the seventh, led off the visitors' ninth with a base hit to left. But Foster then set down Lundy, Williams, and Page to bring the West up for their last chance in the bottom of the ninth. Due up for the West, the heart of the order: Turkey Stearns, Mule Suttles, and Roy Parnell. In a showdown between future Hall of Famers, Page struck out Stearns for his fifth K and the first out in the ninth. Mule Suttles laced a single to left for his third hit of the ball game. Melvin Putt Powell came in to pinch run, representing the tying run with one out. Roy Parnell hit a vicious drive to shortstop Dick Lundy, who jumped up, speared the ball, and tossed to Charleston for a game-ending double play. East beats West 1-0 in Thriller. Willie Foster loses contest with Satchel Paige. James Bell steals second, then scores. For the East, 1 run, 8 hits, 1 error. The West, no runs, 7 hits, 1 error. These photos have suffered some in the transition from newsprint to microfilm to digitization, but they provide us with a look at some of the action. At the top left, Mule Suttles is being caught at the plate on Larry Brown's groundout in the second. The bottom left shows Willie Wells being thrown out trying to steal third. You'll notice neither of those two plays were anywhere near close. The top right photo was Cool Papa Bell in his red pinstriped Pittsburgh Crawfords uniform. And the bottom right shows us the crowd of some 30,000, said at the time to be the largest to ever witness a black sporting event. I'd like to call attention to Comiskey Park's signature arched windows, which feature prominently in the background of most photographs of East-West game action over the years. The undeniable stars of this all-star game were the 6 pitchers, who combined over 18 innings to allow just 1 run on 15 hits with 3 walks and 16 strikeouts, all against the best hitters in blackball. But the black press had little doubt whose star shone the brightest, as Speedball Satchel Paige ambled into the East-West game and simply stole the show. This presentation is the first in a series of 5 I'll be delivering this year, focusing on the 1934 season in blackball. I call this series A Season in the Shadows. In the standard baseball histories I grew up reading, 1934 was the year of Dizzy Dean and the Gas House Gang St. Louis Cardinals. That season also featured a powerful Detroit Tigers pennant winner, Carl Hubbell's strikeout feats at the All-Star game, and a triple crown by Lou Gehrig. But there's another 1934 baseball season hiding in the shadows, missing from those old histories. A season of Pittsburgh Crawfords and Philadelphia Stars, of Slim Jones and Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige and Cool Papa Bell. And there are other stories hidden in the shadows of 1934, far removed from the standard fare of pennant races and playoffs. We'll visit the Negro Southern League and consider the challenges of running a black baseball league in the Jim Crow South. We'll look at budding opportunities toward integration in a California Winter League and in the nation's premier semi pro tournament. And we'll consider the full range of responses to segregation by an oppressed minority, from NAACP Defense Fund games to a key team that played in grass skirts and called themselves the Zulu Cannibal Giants. We'll continue this series in May as we follow the rhythms of the season from winter ball and spring training through the first half of the split season Negro National League schedule. In June, we'll look at the season's second half and that summer's seminal Denver Post tournament. In September, we'll peel apart the many layers of postseason ball, including the NNL playoffs, a couple of famous 4-team doubleheaders at Yankee Stadium, and a barnstorming tour featuring the most famous pitchers in the country, Dizzy Dean and Satchel Paige. And we'll conclude our celebration of black baseball 90 years ago in November by addressing the question, how good were they? And imagining what might have happened if the black and white teams and players of the day shared an equal playing opportunity, playing environment. I've been carrying the story of 1934 around for a very long time and look forward to finally having an opportunity to share it. I hope you'll join us. Among my sources for this presentation were Larry Lester's excellent book on the history of the East-West game. World's Fair images came from the 81 Stainless YouTube channel and the website americasbesthistory.com. Among the baseball websites used were Agate Type, the Sabre Games Project, and Retro Sheet. The statistics and player portraits came from Seamheads. The clippings from newspapers.com and the ProQuest Historical Black Newspaper Database. And my most important resource is a pair of scrapbooks I assembled some 35 years ago, containing coverage of 1934 in the two leading black newspapers of the time, the Pittsburgh Courier and Chicago Defender. I'd like to thank our collaborators, Lifeline Sports, the Community Cup Classic Foundation, P5, the partnership, and yours truly. And special thanks to our most valuable partner, Cuyahoga Arts and Culture. And I invite you all to hook up with us one Saturday every month as we continue our scheduled Negro League Soul presentations. Next month, Ike is going to take a look at the women of the Negro Leagues.